So why don't we start with introductions?
So I'm an artist. I grew up with artists. It was normal for me. My father painted, my mother painted and embroidered and wrote. Like our house is full of art that they made, and I thought everybody's house looked like that. But no, that's not necessarily the case. So that's something that I would say I had. I wouldn't call it an advantage, but it's definitely an inclination that I had. I think genetically, and also being growing up in a creative environment with two struggling artists, to be honest, struggling artists. So I was always interested in that kind of work. I thought all kind of work involved some kind of creative aspect. That's what I grew up around. So that's kind of how I went into looking for work when when I got out of school. I was very interested in photography, and I did pretty well when I was in school taking photos. My photos were in galleries, and I would have models, not fashion, but like fine art, black and white, darkroom, and all that jazz. I loved it, but I never really felt like I was very good looking. And I thought you had to be good looking in order to be a model. Like I thought that was what you had to be, was good looking. Um, Given that I am, mixed race. I don't know how many races, to be honest. Both my parents come from varied backgrounds. So in growing up in Florida, people didn't really see that as normal. And so I was very awkward, and they would make fun of me a lot. So I didn't feel pretty. Therefore, at the time when I was doing photography, I felt like modeling was out of the question. That's kind of like some background of who I am and regarding my modeling career.
Very cool. And I think that there's a lot of corollaries there. I think a lot of people share very similar connections and starting points, and especially this idea of beauty having a definition, and especially in the fashion industry having a very well defined definition. And I'm curious, what was your first modeling opportunity? And was it something you did just for fun? Or was it something, go ahead and share.
Yeah. So my sister was taking photography in school, and that's kind of what turned me on to it because I loved what she was doing. And she needed in her for her, one of her high school classes, she needed a model. I had just got my hair done, so it was straight instead of curly, and that was like the cool girl look was straight. So I'm like, wow, I can do straight hair. And so she took photos of me, set up like this home studio for her high school photography project, did my makeup, got some outfits for me. That was my first photo shoot. And since she was a photographer, I used to be very shy and awkward, painfully so. Like I would cry after talking to someone. I was that shy. But with her, I felt comfortable. So I would get into poses, I'd get into attitudes, I'd get into moods easy with that photo shoot. So when I saw the pictures, I was like, wow, I was impressed with how they came out. I thought it was all my sister. I didn't realize that I had something to do with it as well. I thought it's my sister. She's very talented. That's why the pictures came out so nice. So that I would say was my first successful photo shoot. And she got a lot of good feedback. I did too. I grew up in kind of I would say kind of strict and very old-fashioned Dominican environment. So you're not, we weren't encouraged to like go and like be models and be in front of the camera. It was like, no, you have to be humble and not show your body, that kind of thing. So so that kind of stopped me from continuing to pursue that with other photographers when I was like 14 or whatever, when I did my first shoot with my sister. That was my first successful shoot.
Very cool. So 14 years old. And so you went through school. And if I'm remembering correctly, you got your major in English. You were an English major.
That's correct. Yes.
So you went to school, you studied, you became an English major, and then you embarked on a career in modeling. How did that happen?
Sure. So I love writing. I like expression. I like character analysis. I've always liked, while I was studying English in school, I got into performance art, and I felt like this was an outlet for all my frustration and to also be in front of the camera instead of being behind the camera taking photos. So that kind of went into that whole character analysis that I was really good at when I was studying English. I was like really, really good at that. So I kind of became that character analysis in a sense. So it's interesting. I was ready to leave my hometown after I graduated. I was like, I have to get out of here. So I'll pick up any job that'll take me away from here. So my sister started getting contacts from photographers and stuff. She was very interested in modeling. So I kind of tagged along because I was actually pretty interested too, but I just didn't feel very attractive. So we did a test with a photographer at an agency. The agency said yes. And they, this was like in Orlando, Florida. They transferred us to, or not transferred, but they contacted people in Miami, agencies in Miami, to see if they were interested in having us as part of their roster. So I went ahead and moved to Miami after Next Model Management said yes. I was with them for like a year. I did not like modeling at the time. I didn't know how to say no to photographers who were pushy. And I was marginalized a lot. Like, it's like, oh yeah, if you want like a weird looking mixed race girl who has like platinum blonde hair, we got her, but we're not gonna I would say, how would you say? We're not gonna market her to clients. We're just gonna have her sitting there. So I didn't really get a lot of work at the time. And my aesthetic was also really, really quirky, and it only was that. Like, I show up with some really quirky outfits to a casting, so people really didn't know what to make of me at the time. Quirky meaning very colorful, pom-poms, homemade things, asymmetrical, like shoes. I'd have two different shoes on. Like, they didn't know what to make of me when I showed up at the casting. The client didn't know how to visualize what they wanted, their end product, because they saw something so specific when they saw me. So plus not knowing how to say no to photographers who wanted nudity, you know, and were very pushy about it, made it difficult for me to enjoy modeling. So I gave it up like a year after getting into with Next, and that's kind of how I first was exposed to modeling professionally.
Well, you said several really interesting things, and I wonder if we can back up just a hair, because this is a topic that I have a bit of experience with just on the photography side of things. And so this would be you in Orlando, Florida, and this is you, I think, just having signed with Next. And you mentioned that that sort of relationship with the photographer having been, you know, nudity can be a component, but I'm sure there were other creative components as well. Like here, why don't you just put this octopus on your head? Can you just do that? Or whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
You know, how did you navigate there's no college for this? How did you navigate learning how to interpret a creative brief or a creative expectation and then translate that into reality?
Yeah. So again, I grew up with creative people, so they were always interpreting things around me. I was a portrait model when I was a little girl for my father. Like, you know, like I knew how to, in that way, I knew how to model. You could say, like, because I was an art model at first. So I would say also having a creative brain. If somebody had a cool idea, like put an octopus on your head, because I want you to look like you came out of a swamp. I'm like, sure, I'll put that octopus on my head. I don't care about that. But if somebody wanted me to reveal more private details about myself in order to sell or promote a product, I felt like that's weird. Like, put your boobs here so we can sell this, you know, this popsicle. It's like, no, that's kind of weird for me. at the time, I didn't know how to say, you know, if you want to sell a popsicle, just have me wear a bikini and we'll make it like a summertime popsicle thing. Like I didn't know how to like redirect someone's creative idea when I was not jiving with it, especially if it was exposing me, you know, in a very private manner. And me, especially during that time, being a very private person and not being used to, you know, modeling, I didn't know how to do that. Also, it was difficult for me to communicate with people. I was still very shy. I didn't know how to voice my own opinion. So encountering that kind of thing where somebody wanted me to, you know, just be topless for something and for a casting, like, okay, I need you to show up topless for this casting, was like weird. But Miami has more of that. I'm realizing now it's the market that has more of that now that I have more experiences with other markets. So I didn't know if that was all models, all modeling opportunity was kind of, could be kind of interpreted as skeezy like that. I didn't understand at the time. So I just wanted to not, you know, not have to deal with that stress anymore. I was already very, I was very depressed at the time. I was very shy. So it was like one less thing to have to deal with. I just wanted a normal job after my first year working with Next.
Well, so for your process of developing that voice and developing that confidence, I'm curious, is there any advice that you might give, especially to young models now, as they're sort of approaching these same circumstances? What would be a couple of key tips for maybe developing that linguistic ability to redirect, or developing the confidence to say no, and developing an understanding of what a market is looking for in the first place?
Yeah, I would say something that'll help with confidence, something that helped me was to respect people even if you don't agree with them. You can still respect them. So let's say they're asking you to do something that you don't feel comfortable. Don't go ahead and do it even though you don't feel comfortable. Like that, you're not keeping integrity with yourself. You can easily lose yourself in an industry like that wants you to like be a brand, you know, not to be an individual, but be a brand in order for them to promote a business. I get it, that's advertising. But if you don't feel comfortable, say no. Yet, if you can still respect the person and find another avenue, like, you know, I see what this person is trying to do. They're trying to make this dress look very feminine and very romantic. You know, I don't want to, you know, have the dress falling off of me in a certain way that will reveal too much, but I can bring pasties to the shoot that are nude. I can bring like a nude thong to the shoot, so it's gonna look nice and I'll still feel like I'm keeping some privacy. I don't feel too exposed, because that does mean something to models. I know in this day and age, a lot of people like privacy, whatever. Privacy is valuable. It's very valuable, I think, especially in this day and age where we don't feel like we have as much as we used to. Many of us don't. There's cameras and ways to connect and ways to show off what you're having for breakfast, you know, like, so it's a different context lately. So if you feel uncomfortable, say something for sure. But you can also try to see what the photographer, what the director is trying to create, and you can say something about it. You can say, you know, I know you're trying to do this thing. Let me try to come up another idea for you. As they say, two heads are better than not one. So it doesn't have to be all about their idea. Try to respectfully contribute, and you might be surprised at how they respond in a positive manner to a new idea.
I would definitely echo that. I would agree with that 100%. And my process is very collaborative. And I think that if you're in a commercial environment, it must be. I don't know how you survive and not be collaborative. And if the goal is the creative, then every decision that's made has to support the creative. And one's willingness to pivot is going to determine one's level of success in achieving that. And And on the topic of creativity, because you have artists for parents and you're very creative yourself, I highly value creativity, especially in models or anyone that I'm working with, because it makes 100% difference than if you're not. I don't know how to say this without sounding polemic, but if you're not super creative naturally, and you're just kind of a deer in the headlights, and sometimes things just move so fast. How would you describe your creative process? I know you did a little bit, but
Yeah.
how would you describe it? And what advice would you give for people that maybe don't have a point of view or a creative process in mind yet? How do you start pulling influences, and how do you start developing that sense of who you are creatively?
Sure. Um, I heard something once that mentioned that we are all creative, like even our bodies are creative. So whenever somebody tells me you're so creative, I'm not. I'm like, I kind of laugh inside, not because I think that they said something stupid, but that it's kind of like sometimes they'll have an experience at a school where they try to draw something, their teacher's like, you're just not one of us, I'm an art teacher, you're just not one of the creatives, so good luck with that. And that'll kind of stick with them throughout life, so they'll think I'm not creative. But like you see kids, they love to experiment, they love to mess around, they love to create things. They like to make a mess and see what happens, and look mom, look what I made. So that's something that's inherent to us. I feel like we're all inherently creative. Something I like to tell people who feel that, oh, I'm not creative, I'll let them know, hey, I feel like we're all creative. Even the cells in our bodies are our bodies creating new cells, and new neurological avenues are being created in our minds. So yes, we are inherently creative, like to the very fiber of our being. Some of us express it more freely than others. Some of us are very good in the kitchen. Some of us are very good creating solutions on how to navigate through traffic. So yes, we're all creative. And I think that outlook can empower someone to find other avenues of creativity that they felt weren't available to them before.
Oh, I definitely agree. And I've been hearing this over and over again from everyone throughout the fashion industry. But, even with Chase Jarvis has been saying this for many years. And I was going through the book on creativity that he just released, and echoing your same sentiments. It's like it's in our cells. Just the fact that we have neuroplasticity and we can redevelop neural pathways and recover from significant damage is a miracle. And we all have that.
Yeah.
And as sort of the industry treads forward, I'm curious. Well, maybe it's an unfair question to put you on the spot like this, but how can we apply creativity in the process of developing a model career? Sort of part one of the question, and I think a more granular way of saying that is um, maybe how do you start developing a genre or a path? Is it just kind of shotgun approach where let's just try everything and see what sticks, or is there a way of saying, I think based on this output and this market, maybe I have a better shot of doing this thing over here? Maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I find that the industry is always changing, and lately, I think social media had a lot to do with it. There's a lot of changes in what the industry is looking for. Again, don't take things personal. If they say your nose is too big, or your nose is too small, your legs are too long, your legs are too short, you're going to get different feedback from different people that will be like night and day sometimes. So, whatever. Don't take that part personal. Know that the industry is always changing. So, I find that to be exciting. So it's not going to be a repetition of the same thing. Like, oh, I had this obstacle. They don't like girls with freckles, which was the case for a while. Now they love girls with freckles. So don't be so attached to an obstacle when it comes to modeling, because the industry is changing. Stick with it. They value a unique look. They always have. So if you have something unique, stick with it. Like, Giselle Bundchen is an example of that. They asked her to make her nose smaller when she first started, and her father said, "No, you're not. People with a nice nose have nice character, so keep your nose." And she did. Cindy Crawford with her beauty mark, same thing. They asked her to take it off the beginning of her career. She didn't. So approach it with a measure of confidence. Try to develop confidence in yourself, whatever way you can, and that'll definitely help you when it comes to finding an avenue in your modeling career that feels good for you, that is supportive of you as well.
For sure, definitely. And I get asked this quite a lot from a lot of people that say, how do I break in to modeling? Because I want to model. And my sort of follow-up question is I want to provide a little bit of a hurdle. And I think that that hurdles help us to really reframe what it is that we really want out of life and what we desire. I wanted to be a photographer because I thought that meant you become famous. This was many years ago. That doesn't happen for more than 1% of the population. So you better have a better why. And I found out that my why was, I really love that activity of creativity, especially if I can connect it with the feeling of being seen. And for so many years, I just never felt seen. And
yeah, same.
yeah, and my job now is to see others and to see everyone's beauty and to see everyone's contribution. And how does that support the larger creative? And whether it's people in Hollywood or whether it's people just next door, like for me, it's the same criteria every single time. And every job has that level of importance to it because I can connect it to a different why. And I'm curious if you could give some advice to maybe people starting out. Is the answer to go to casting calls? Is the answer to go to open calls? Is the answer to just spam agencies? If you haven't really developed that why yet, or is this something that maybe you can figure out along the way?
Yeah. If you want to be a model, if you want to be famous and beautiful, it's not going to get you very far. You have to have a real passion because you're going to have to be persistent as F for this. You're going to have to be persistent AF if you want to make a dime modeling. If you want to just have people take pretty pictures of you and post it on Instagram or for whatever, have it on your phone for funsies, that's different. But if you want clients, big clients to notice you, you're going to have to be persistent. So you need more than just wanting to be famous and beautiful. So, or people to tell you that you're so beautiful and, now everybody loves you and knows your name. Try to figure out why is it that you'd like to be a part of this career, because you're going to get some shit from clients, that is going to make you feel upset, and you're going to still have to be persistent afterwards and still connect to that why, connect to that passion that'll keep you going, saying, I'm going to do this again. Even though today was crappy and difficult, I'm going to do this again. So find out what it is. For me, something that as I was wavering after going with Next, I wavered and thought, this is a crap job. I don't want, and it's all about, appearances and superficiality. And I'm still not about that. I'm not about that at all. So I remember I came back to Seattle and I decided, let me give modeling another shot. I went to SMG several times, 3 times. The last time they said yes. So first time was a maybe, second time was a no, which made me really sad. I tried Hefner too, but for some reason I like SMG just a bit better. I like the vibe there. They seem like nice people. Then the second time when they said no, they let me know that some people said yes, some people said no. Most of the people said no because of my angles. And I thought, what does that mean of my angles? So I went back to Miami where I was living. I was in a transition to move to Seattle at the time. And I decided to get some really good pictures taken. I tested with people. I dyed my hair back to natural because it was platinum blonde. And I got some nice pictures taken. And then when I moved to Seattle, I went back to SMG and said, hi, my name is so-and-so, as if I never met them. And gave them my portfolio. And they came back and said, yeah, we like your portfolio. We'd like you to work with us. And then they recognized me afterwards. They're like, well, good for you for being persistent. So you're going to have to be persistent. Once you're with an agency, it's not like now you're going to make money. You have to still be persistent. You're an independent contractor. You don't have a boss. You don't have an employer telling you what to do. You have to be the one doing it. So test, that'll help you feel natural in front of the camera. Keep testing with people. Find what works for you when it comes to posing, when it comes to like a mood that you can feel. For me, it's a mood that I feel, so I can kind of act it out as I'm modeling. So whatever it is that just connects you and helps you flow into a good expression when you're modeling is something that's really nice when you find it. But it does take practice in front of the camera because, you know, having a camera in front of your face is very difficult, very uncomfortable for a lot of people. So just practice, 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 test, 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 test again, and you'll find yourself feeling more in the flow if you do actually still enjoy modeling by that time.
Oh, definitely. And I think that kind of touches on what I meant before with the sort of a shotgun approach. And, you know, do I just test with anyone and everyone, or, you know, how do I identify what are those sort of key photographers or key agents or whomever that will produce the desired result that I think I'm going for, and how do I get in front of them? And it might be a little bit difficult. I think some photographers are looking for a specific person or a specific look to test.
Sure.
But I think that having and this is a different topic that I don't necessarily want to get into too much detail right now, but for me, developing taste and my own personal sense of taste and my own point of view, and having virtually no taste for so long,
Sure.
and saying, does this look good? Is this the good direction? I don't.
Yeah.
And then, you know, in the school of hard knocks, saying, oh, this is what elegance and this is refinement and this communicates this and this communicates that. And but it was a long and arduous pathway to get there. And it was a lot of very frustrating failures on my part, just not knowing how to utilize a visual language to communicate, which is the whole job. But on the topic of, like I said, I don't want to get too much on that, but I do want to sort of shift with that in mind towards, you know, sort of the future landscape of modeling. Now, I was some time back in a mall in Temecula, California, and I was passing by the Bainbridge jewelry store. And I was like, who is that on that? Is that, no, this is Ange. Ange is on the thing. And I think I screenshotted it and I sent it to you, and I was like, look what I saw. I just saw you in California.
Hey. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know how they use the images afterwards. It's always exciting to me to find out through friends, or I'll happen to see something, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you, so, you know, having slogged through this whole sort of backstory of growing pains, you know, what is it like where you get to actually see the fruit of your labor and you see yourself on these billboards and signage and digital, and, you know, how do you react to that?
Yeah, I don't try to be like, wow, I'm finally famous, like, because that isn't my goal, is to be famous and beautiful. And I find that a lot of people enter modeling like that and they get tired fast. So I just feel like, yep, that's my job. You know, like, yep, that's my job. Yep, I did a good job. High five to me. But it's a job. It's work. So nobody's feeding me grapes, nobody's fanning me. It's not that glamorous. It's work. It's hard work sometimes. So I feel like I did good work, and I feel proud of myself for the good work that I've done.
So it feels like vindication, right? It feels like, okay, now I'm on the right path. This feels more like the direction that I want to go.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. To me, I don't try to get attached to like, oh, I'm going to get so many more jobs. I try to just take things one day at a time, since that's kind of the nature of working freelance. You don't know exactly what's going to come up, or if a client is going to, who's booked you so many times is going to look for a new look. I try not to get too attached. And I find that that outlook has actually given me a lot of success, because I felt more joy in each job that I get without having to expect them to continue in a certain way. So I take it as it comes, and if it's a great job and I like how it came out, I'm very proud. I'm very happy with it. I'm happy to work with the creative people I did for the shoot. I'm happy to see how they collaborate, how they come up with something fun. I love to be a part of that. It's like this beautiful stew where everybody's throwing a little something and it smells so good. And I got to be a part of that too. So, and also I really like that when the shoot is very successful, something really kind of magical can happen. And I'll go back to an experience that kind of turned me on to what I really like about modeling. So it's in Seattle. I had signed with SMG. I was more into modeling than I was in Miami, but it was still kind of so-so. One day I met somebody who was putting together a high school runway show. She contacted my agency. They contacted me saying, look, it's a free show for, like, they're not going to pay you, but it's for a good cause. Would you like to help out? And I thought, sure, I like runway. There's not a whole lot of runway shows in Seattle, so I'll go ahead and take this one. And so I'm backstage, and they have like a lot of high schoolers showing off the rest of the designs. And then they introduce me, and here's a real model. And I'm like in the backstage, like, oh my God, here's a real agency representative model from SMG, and she's gonna, introduce so-and-so's design. So I'm like, oh my goodness. So I just walked down the runway. I gave it what I got. I didn't try to pretend that it wasn't as good of a job as others. I gave it what I got. I did a good walk. And so that was over. The show was over. I got my stuff. I got dressed. I was leaving. And this older woman came up to me and she said, are you, so you do this for work? And I said, yeah, I model for work. She's like, you're a real model? And I said, yeah, this is what I do for my job. And she told me, it was so beautiful to see you up there. It just gave me so much motivation, to see a beautiful woman walking like that. And I was like, wow, because she was, she's a mom and her daughter goes to high school, or her son. And that gave her that put like a little spark in her heart, and I could see it in her eye, and the way she expressed herself to me, of like that motivated her to feel like a beautiful woman. And like she also had a look that wouldn't be promoted on in like an advertisement on the runway. She had a very like kind of more of an, how would I say, like she was like heavier, quite a bit heavier than me, and she had gray hair. But nonetheless, even though there was an age difference and other kinds of differences, she still found like power through my expression, down the runway. And I thought, wow, that's so powerful. That's so meaningful. And that, to this day, like sometimes I'll see an ad of myself. I'm like, I hope that makes somebody feel like they're beautiful. Like I hope somebody will see that and say, wow, I have crazy hair too. They'll find a connection. And I think that's one aspect of how I look, is that I look like a lot of different people because of my multi-racial background, that people can connect their look with my look. So if they see me in an ad like the Ben Bridge jewelry ad, I hope that people can see that and perhaps feel motivated to feel beautiful in whatever look they have in their body, feel comfortable and beautiful in their own skin. As a woman, you know, I think it's very important, and it's just, it can give you so much joy and help you feel motivated to express yourself as a unique individual. So that's something that I'm really keen on when I try to model, is I think about those people that might be watching this and might be getting something good out of it.
I definitely think it works. Whatever you're doing is definitely working, and you built a brand around creativity. But what I've really appreciated was there is so much joy in the work that you do, and whatever the company you're working with, is just, you're always at peace. There's this calm, there's this confidence about you, and there's a ton of joy, and I've come to really appreciate that. And I think that it's something that the world can use a lot more of, especially now, and especially in industries and markets that are so hypersexualized. I think that reconnecting with things that genuinely, you know, almost like Marie Kondo, those things that spark joy in your life, and accepting those with gratitude, I think an industry can be like that. And uh, shifting gears just a little bit, I'm very curious, you know, during this sort of time of crisis and this pandemic, as it was beginning, you were in New York, I think for Fashion Week, right? And then you came back and we worked together, I think in February, um, and I think all of us have been sort of in lockdown quarantine ever since. And how have you been managing during this time?
Yeah. So I came back in March, mid-March, just before the shit hit the fan in New York City. I'm like, the poor folks over there, my heart goes out to them. Yeah, it seems I had no idea that was going to happen shortly after I left. They closed like the airport I was leaving from like 3 days after I had left due to the pandemic, for I think a short amount of time. But anyway, so I left right before that happened. So it's, that part was kind of stressful, thinking of my friends over there, thinking of my friends over here, and it is nice to be home again, you know, and have that security and familiarity. Now that I'm experiencing quarantine, I there's a lot of projects that I had been putting kind of to the side, like some drawing, some sewing and embroidery projects, that now it's like I can look at them and say, come over here, let me let me get back into this and roll up my sleeves and get to work on it again. So so I do appreciate having no excuse to express myself in those creative ways that I told myself I hadn't had the time for it before. I definitely have the time to do it now. So I've been sewing a little bit. I'm making masks for some friends, some heart-shaped masks. So they're really cute, and they cover what you need to cover, but they look, you know, kind of fun. I've been embroidering some. I'm making like a little picture book for my nephew. So, and I'm making like, I'm binding together a dream journal for myself, a really large dream journal. So it's good. It's been awkward. It's been uncomfortable, but I have a home. I have a roof over my head. I have running clean water. I have food in the fridge. You know, I have a place to sleep that's comfortable. So it's all right. It's all good. There's some people who go through their lives without those basic things. So I still got them, and I'm going to enjoy them, and I'm going to appreciate them maybe even more now that I'm spending so much time.
Very cool. I think that this definitely gives a lot of perspective, and as consumerism goes, and as we're sort of looking at the economy, and in times like these, you know, spending just doesn't happen, and so the Federal Reserve sort of kicks in, lowers interest rates, and prints a bunch of money. And the stimulus package that was recently signed in the United States and has been going out to people is the largest in history. And we're certainly echoing what happened in the Reconstruction area, sort of World War II-ish, and even before with the Great Depression. And the last 500 years of global economies have shown us that, you know, this is a smaller blip on a larger trend, and that the world will eventually bounce back. It just feels really, it feels bad right now. And holding on to that sort of, whatever that practice of gratitude that you have, is even more important, because things will get better, even though it doesn't look like it right now. I'm curious, you just give a really great list of things, but what is it that you're most grateful for? And do you have like a gratitude practice, or is there something that you do to develop more mindfulness, or even just to relax and chill out and veg?
Yeah, I think if we label something that empowers us and relaxes us and puts us at a peaceful, good place, it makes it more difficult. Like mindfulness or meditation, people think it's this big thing where you have to like close your eyes and think of a leaf, and if you don't think about that leaf, you let like a thought take over your mind, then you have to go back to that leaf. And to me, like, I try not to make it very difficult, you know. I make it like I haven't reached that peak mindfulness or peak meditation trance that I wanted to, you know. I'm just gonna, you know, and then you feel like frustrated with yourself, like you didn't do a good job, and it just makes it kind of pointless to me. So for something that I'd like to give me peace, to give me empowerment, I try to keep it as simple as possible. You know, sometimes just laying down and closing my eyes, just lay down and close your eyes and take a big deep breath. Take another one, take another one. Okay, that's good, you know? Or just sitting down and thinking about two things that you're grateful about. It could be anything. It could be, I'm happy to have feet, okay? You know, I'm happy to have fresh air that I can breathe. Perfect, you know. Or more specific, you know, I'm very grateful for my circle of friends. I'm very grateful for this particular family member being there for me when I needed them. So there's always something, you know. I'm grateful to hear birds singing, you know, I'm grateful to hear. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. And you don't have to like come up with a huge list and go over the huge list. Just one or two things, maybe once a week even, right? It's better than none. If you want to do every day, do every day, but it doesn't have to be like this ritual that can eventually feel heavy and imposed, and you don't want to keep practicing it anymore. I try to keep it as light as I can and be flexible with myself as well. So that's what works for me.
At what point do you yourself find that balance, or how do you interpret this deluge of news and media and sift through it in a way that that educates you but doesn't just suck you down with the gravity of the situation? How do you keep things in perspective and balanced?
I don't let myself be given a deluge of information. I choose the information I would like, oh, I would like to hear about, you know, this looks very interesting, about what's happening in the Philippines right now. I would like to know about that. I'll turn that on. Or thank goodness that we have so many outlets, or so many means of receiving information, that, you know, I can choose what I'd like to receive. I don't just turn on Fox News and like, and they're barking, you know, and just let it play in the background. I actually grew up with somebody who was kind of a newsaholic. So I learned how to not be like that, or not even a little bit. So, because it was very damaging for this person. So, so what I like to do is choose like you would choose like a diet that's good for you, right? I'm not just gonna bring in whatever you got, you know. It's like kind of like a mental diet. So I like to choose things that are informative. things that are giving me a good perspective. You know, they help me feel more grateful for what I got, for instance, and wish for the best for these other ones that aren't receiving these basic needs. But I don't allow myself to be deluged with a bunch of information that's coming to me from people who want to promote their news source. So they're not really thinking, a lot of times it feels like they're not thinking so much about uplifting the audience, about giving them something constructive to work on so they can make society better. It's just a bunch of like junk news. And a lot of it is very depressing because people latch on to the drama. They like to hear more about drama and you know, death and destruction and oh my gosh, you know. So I'm choosy about the information I receive, just like I'm choosy about what I eat. For instance, you know, like if you're allergic to something, if something makes you keep feeling depressed, it doesn't motivate you, it does not help you want to wake up in the morning and do something about it, then you know, you're allergic to that kind of information. So I realized what I'm allergic to, and I'm not the best at it, but I do try to choose sources that will inform me and perhaps even motivate me. Sometimes I do get depressed too. I mean, it's part of being human right now, but I just, like I said, I just don't take in random information.
I'm very curious what your thoughts, especially from the modeling side of things, are. Where do you see the jobs of the future really happening?
I think it's a very good idea to be flexible and to maintain a flexibility no matter how old or how young you are. I think some people think the older they get, the more set in their ways they are. I don't think that that is necessarily the case. It's something that we tell ourselves. Um, so that's how I like to approach it. So I find it to be exciting. This is something new. It's something that I think is a response to our environment, you know, our environment that is our natural environment that is suffering from being misused. So foot traffic is great. Bicycling is great. You know, I think that's wonderful. And it is a big change for a lot of us, for all of us. These are big changes. When it comes to modeling, I had started to set up home studio shoots here, looking for spots in my apartment that have good lighting and nice background. And I sent that over to my agents in different parts of the United States so they could send over to clients as well. So that's been very helpful in kind of allowing me to touch on something that wasn't so available before. And another avenue of work, another avenue of income that was always available to me, but now is more, I would say, now people are looking for that more. So people are willing to hire you to shoot in your own space. So it's kind of exciting to think about that. Now that opens up more avenues of work, more avenues of income. So I do think keeping a flexible approach is good instead of being too attached to, oh man, I love to show up in a studio and I love to be flown to this part of the world to take a picture. Flying takes a lot of fossil fuels to do, for example. So maybe one day we won't be flying anymore. We'll have to find other ways. But I like to think of it as a progression rather than like a drastic change. In a personal way, I like to progress. So if this change is allowing and facilitating progression for me, I'm on it. I'll take the opportunity. It is uncomfortable since change can be uncomfortable, but I think change is it's the name of the game. It's the game of life or whatever. It's part of the game of life. So, you know, get used to it. That's and have fun with it even, because it can be a fun experiment.
Do you think you'll get into photography more? Do you think maybe
Yeah, I
for the
think
home
so.
studio, maybe you can get into some product photography or do some work for local brands? And
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. And also given the really good feedback I got from the pictures I took for home studio, I noticed that my knack for creating images from behind the camera is still just as alive as it ever was. It's not like it went anywhere. So I still find a lot of joy in it. I'm still very particular about how things come out. I have an aesthetic. Now that I've worked in modeling for a while, I know more about how to light product, how to light models, how to do fashion, like something with more of a fashion focus than a fine art focus like I used to do. So that does open up another avenue that I hadn't touched on before. So who knows? I that's something that I had considered though. I'm still more focused on being behind the camera, and that's going pretty well for me. But I would not be opposed to doing more shoots with the intention of um, product photography, shooting products for a brand, shooting models for a brand. I think that would be a lot of fun. And also my experience as a model would give me that insight so I can direct and encourage the models that I'm working with and help them achieve a look that they would be really happy with and the brand would be happy with as well.
Well, based on that feedback, I have some ideas that I'd love to roll by you, maybe at a
Okay.
different
Yeah.
time.
Sure.
But what I'm hearing is business is open and your photography studio is open. So it looks like the future is looking bright, and digital is only helping you to achieve something that you've always been passionate about and maybe has been on the back burner. And
Yeah, sure.
so there's a lot of optimism moving forward.
Yeah, I would say so. I feel like I could be pessimistic. Yes, I could. And I've done that before. Sometimes I still do that. I don't like to tell people about um, me and my struggles with pessimism, but they have been. But I do feel like if I choose something realistic and optimistic, it helps me get along. It helps me make something of it. And it feels a lot better than just saying, maybe I'm not going to get the jobs I wanted to get. Maybe I'm just going to have to, you know, be upset about this change and I don't know what to do. We don't know what's going to happen, like nobody knows the future. So, so what else can we do except adapt and make the best of it and try to find an outlook that'll motivate and encourage us to progress and move forward. Like there are outlooks that exist that we can choose that will help us find that strength and maybe even happiness in trying something new.